All right, welcome everybody to the November 28th MicroProfile live hangout with a large cast of characters this meeting. Thanks everyone for joining. As usual, the notes, the link to the minutes, I should say, are in the chat. It is everyone's collective responsibility to take notes during the meeting. So, with that being said, last week we kind of started a fairly, hopefully repeatable approach to having these meetings where we first provide a roadmap update, project status updates for each project, any kind of marketing update, and then an open discussion section. So, with that being said, maybe Kevin, do you feel okay just chatting about I don't think there's any change since last week, but what the roadmap currently is?
No, I don't think there has been much change, but that's where I'm looking forward to the input from the rest of the components, just to see if we are on track to have anything ready for a MicroProfile 1.3 train. So the goal is still to have that ready by the end of the fourth quarter, so by the end of December. But we need the other components to get on board, or else there isn't going to be a release. So that's where I'm just kind of looking forward to see where everybody's at. I know I wasn't able to make it to the last meeting, but I did read through the minutes, and it looks like we're making progress. But then, like I haven't seen any release candidate drivers coming out, and with the goal of having these components ready by, either December 8th or 15th, we're kind of running out of room. So I'm just kind of wondering where we're at and if we still have something in plan.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? We're going to go over the components here in a second, but does anyone else have any roadmap thoughts?
Just with the date clarification, the umbrella release was targeted for December 15th, according to the Eclipse page. That's not the hard release date, but rather some we should finally get our stuff together date, or what does that mean?
Yeah. So I had put December 15th as a stake in the ground. I think some of the other components also picked December 15th. Well, chicken and the egg type thing. I can't have all the components finished on the same day that the final MicroProfile release is done.
Of course.
So if the MicroProfile release slips out a week, I'm okay with that if we need to, if the components aren't going to be ready. But that's where I just kind of want to know, if some of the components just are not going to be able to make it in December, then we'll have a better definition of what MicroProfile is, and then we can adjust the date accordingly. So I'm kind of flexible with the overall MicroProfile date, but looking for the individual components.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments on the roadmap before we move on to component updates? Alrighty, config. Any updates on config from 2 weeks ago?
I think it's we are trying to release the small ticketing in the class, the API change, and create a 1.2 release. I think is that we need to discuss on the data room and limit the issues we're trying to push through and then do a release, I think.
All right. I apologize, everyone. Emily kind of came off fairly tinny across my my headset. So if someone can jot something in the notes about that.
Okay, I will.
It was difficult for me as well.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
It's fairly tinny and not very clear, so it's kind of hard. But if you can, jot down in the meeting minutes what the config status is. The link is in the chat. All right, let's move on to OpenAPI.
Hey, can you hear me? This is
Yes.
Arthur.
Yes.
Hey, so yeah, so the APIs and the spec are in pretty good shape. I was actually wondering how to do a release candidate. So maybe if somebody wanna help me out with the link offline, that would be cool. We have, I think I spoke about this 2 weeks ago, but I actually went and did a count, and it's a pretty big spec that we have here. We have 41 annotations, 55 models, and 3 APIs that we're pushing forward. So when you combine all that up, it's about 100 classes, which makes the TCK quite challenging. So that's the part that we're kind of putting all hands on deck and asking for help from other folks as well is on the TCK. So that's where we are right now. We're trying to get something. We already have a basic test running, but we're trying to get these 2 big apps that we have that we contribute with Smart Barrel and open source that kind of covers maybe 90% of those APIs. And then the plan is to just iterate through the apps and see what we're missing in terms of code coverage and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to track to our December 8th date. I don't know if the TCK will make us push maybe closer to December 15th or around there. So that's where we are at the moment. But I think overall, I would say we're looking good.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, Arthur.
Yep.
Any comments about OpenAPI from anybody?
Yeah, so Arthur, this is Kevin. I just put in the meeting minutes a link to the spec release process. So at least you can kind of get started there. And, if you have questions, there's a lot of people that have been through the process.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, the one thing that was just came to me now as well is the TCK, we really need some implementation to run against it, right, before we release it. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, most likely, yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So we're working in parallel on implementation in Open Liberty, but that's challenging as well. So that might be another factor that pushes our date past the December 8th target.
I think this is a little bit of a chicken egg situation here. We were discussing this with a smaller thing in metrics as well, where if we should include something in a spec before or in a TCK before we have an implementation of it. But of course, if the spec is not complete, you can't really implement the spec. So this is, and I guess some of these you can sort of test with a, let's say, sample implementation or prototype. And then if that sort of mostly works, then it's good. And in worst case, you can still iterate on the TCK later, or leave some of these corner cases out and deliver them afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's exactly where we're at, and that's the thing that I was thinking of. If I could have like a release candidate 0, for example, that almost froze the API and spec and said, here is something that's pretty stable that you can go ahead and do a beta or experimental implementation, and then we use that to run against the TCK. That's kind of where we're at, where I think I only have one more change to push to the API, and then I almost want to declare that as a stable API where we're not really going to take any major changes, so that we can go ahead, implement it, and work with the TCK from there. Maybe that approach will work.
Yep.
The only thing is I want to add is that for the API is only when you write the test and then trying to exercise the API, and then sometimes you find out the API is not very useful. So it's like this is one thing. The other thing is if someone trying to implement the API on spec, you have to try out like for the specification. We need to try out ourselves before we push it to the world and say, okay, go and try it. So I think it's a yeah, will be we'll be more confident if we implement ourselves and we know that the TCK is roughly about right. And then is like what Heiko commented, like is one implementation maybe is kind of still limited. You only have like one. Once you have like 2 or 3 implementations, and then you figure out actually the understanding previously may not be correct. So at that time, you might have to change the TCK again, or improve the stack.
Okay. Any other comments? Alrighty. Open tracing.
Yeah, so we had a meeting Monday of last week, and there need to be some more clarifications made to the spec. I was hoping to get those done, but just didn't get them done last week. So we're working on finishing up the spec with clarifications to make it agreeable to everybody. And then there was also a request, or kind of a thing we thought about, to add in an extra feature, being able to filter tracing URIs. And getting that in with an implementation to test by December is probably going to be hard. I was going to discuss that with the other people who are interested in open tracing. Maybe we could make that part of open tracing 1.1 or something, and not do that filtering for December, but get it into the next, MicroProfile release. So there'll be another feature to add later. Open tracing ability to filter out certain trace requests. As I'm pretty sure we won't be able to get it done before December 15th, that extra work, the implementation and the TCKs for it. So that's the ongoing discussion that we need to have amongst open tracing. Other than that, if we can just go with the smaller API that we have now, which is just some automatic tracing and one annotation and one inject. I think we can hopefully have that by middle of December.
Yeah, I mean, Pavel from our team and myself, we're also helping here with specs clarification and also getting just the infrastructure done, like writing and setting things up and so on. So I think it looks good that we can, or that the spec can achieve something for this release of MicroProfile.
Yeah, definitely. Am I clear now?
Much.
Oh, good. So it's I think it's defining the MVP. Like we have the time, like mid December, and then we have to push some of the like more advanced feature, like as Steve said, to 1.1. I think we'll be able to make the open tracing to MP 1.3. I think it will look really nice to have open tracing and some basic function in the MP 1.3. And we vote to have this.
Any other open tracing comments? Okay. Metrics.
Yeah, so
I see. Are you the anonymous crow doing the typing in Google Docs? Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm an anonymous crow, but I was typing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have decided to postpone one of the larger features that we wanted to get into 1.1, which would not have made MicroProfile 1 1.3 and instead add some smaller features and changes and a little bit of wording changes, clarification in the spec, and release this as a 1.1. One of these changes is now using config to get the global tags in. And what was the other one? Was a request about sharing of metrics at various call sites. Something internal that Scott Stark brought up when creating the Java 1 demo or working on a Java 1 demo. And then some clarifications. So yeah, so we are on track, I would say.
What was the larger feature that was postponed?
This was amongst other that the other MicroProfile specs get a dedicated place within the model to put their metrics into, so that they can be exposed in a common way to management clients.
Okay.
So, for example, that fault tolerance can expose the number of times a retry has happened or the circuit breaker has opened or similar.
Gotcha.
And this will not be in this release because this needs more discussion and a lot more work.
Okay. 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 Thank you. Any other comments on metrics? Alrighty, JWT status update.
I think the latest
Scott.
is, yes, I was just writing and then I decided to speak as well. Scott sent an email a couple of weeks ago saying that I think for 1.3 there wasn't anything that JWT was looking to do for that release.
Okay. By the way, if you want to know, you're an anonymous bat today in Google Docs. Okay. So let's move on. Does anyone else have comments about JWT? All right. Move on to fault tolerance.
So it's there's a couple of things we are still planning to put into the next version 1.1 fault tolerance is such as inheritance. How to configure the subclass, the annotation parameters, and etc. So we are still in discussion, and hopefully I think we are going to nail down this week. And the other issue is currently all the fault tolerance annotations have been inherited. So they are all, all the subclass will inherit the annotations. So currently we are investigating whether we want to change the behavior or not. So hopefully I think we are going to decide tomorrow, and we have a hangout tomorrow, and then to decide are we going to release 1.1 with a couple issues. And definitely we have done some TCK changes, so that's quite good. So but I will let everybody know probably after the call tomorrow. We have decided we want to do a further release. We'll start a ball rolling.
Okay, I think some of us still kind of had a hard time parsing some of what you're saying. So
okay, I will add the details here.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on fault tolerance? All right, health check. Any status update on health check?
Heiko originally wanted to do something, but there was an email last week where I understood that there is nothing urgent, so he will not make an update for MicroProfile 1.3. Ken, did you also?
Okay.
understand it that way?
Yeah, I think that's the same from my understanding.
Yeah, he sent an email to the Google group, isn't it? He asked and nobody responded.
Was that a question, Emily, or a statement?
Oh, sorry. I think yeah. Okay. It is a statement. He sent an email to the Google group and about the further update. However, nobody responded to say yes. Go ahead to do a 1.1 release. But yeah, I don't know all details.
Okay. I didn't quite follow that again, Emily. I'm having the same problem, so apologies. All right. REST client. Anyone want to cover REST client? Any updates?
I can say something about it. I wasn't there from the beginning, but trying to catch up with this initiative. And obviously, John Ament is driving this, and he's not here, so I can sum up what's happening there. So the core API is basically finished, and we were discussing edge cases like handling exceptions and things like that. And there are several issues that can be postponed to a later version, like support for server-send events. So I think with the core set of features, we are almost there. We just need to refine these edge cases, and I think we can have a version for MicroProfile 1.3 in 2 weeks, roughly. But I'm not sure. That's my estimate.
Okay. Any other comments on the REST client?
I have a quick question, Cesar here. Sorry, I haven't been attending the subgroup calls, but quick question for Andro. Are you guys within the REST client group? Are you guys collaborating with the Open API group on anything?
Not yet. There is an issue, and we discussed how we can integrate Open API, but since both are working on the version 1.0, we didn't have time to integrate what we're doing. I hope that in the future versions we will come closer together.
Thanks.
Right now we discussed this, and the only thing how we saw we could integrate is to support some or specify some code generation according to Open API definitions. And we're not sure if it's in scope of MicroProfile or if it's just a tool that would take Open API and somehow generate the REST client codes.
Right.
But we certainly discussed this.
Very good. Thanks.
So, Andrew, do you know who implemented the REST client API? Is John Emmett implementing that REST client API?
I don't know. I'm not aware of any implementation right now. So, but the TCK is quite thorough, not 100%, but quite many test cases are there. So I expect that John also has an implementation somewhere.
I do know Apache CXF has a pretty close implementation. I know that the guy from IBM has been working with that, and I don't know if he's formally running the TCK or just running some of the tests, but that seems to be pretty close. But I don't know what John Emmett is using.
Right. So again, it's like if no implementation, how do we know the TCK are good or not?
I haven't got to this detail yet, but I expect there is something because there are quite many test cases, and it would be hard to develop them without at least a simple implementation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that I think the same question applies to like open tracing, open API. Is have to get an implementation to exercise the TC case.
Okay. Any other comments on the REST client? Alrighty. You know, it's interesting that we now have so many specs that a quick update has actually taken half the call, right? I mean, that just kind of shows, I think, how far we've come as a project. So kind of a, a hat tip to all the folks out there working on the specs.
Yeah, and we did keep the updates pretty, concise. So
exactly.
I mean, sometimes they go off into the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah, at some point we may have to rethink how we do our updates and maybe just cover issues during the call, right? I mean, because at some point we may end up taking the entire call just giving status updates. But again, I think it's a really good sign, right? About how
but I think right now, today was justified because we are close to the the deadline. So
yeah. Marketing update. So I understand that Teresa and I chatted just before the call while we're waiting for people to join, and it sounds like the marketing folks didn't have a chance to meet because of the holiday here in the U.S. But the big question is going to be, since we're not meeting for another 2 weeks, what do we want to do around the 1.3 launch, right? Given it's December, right, and people are going to be, heading on vacation early. Do we want to try and do this in December, or do we can still finish it up in December, but when and how should we push out any kind of marketing around 1.3? That's something I have a curiosity around. But I guess Teresa or Cesar, if you want to maybe give an update.
I had to drop off during the last marketing call, so I think Teresa, you weren't there through the whole call, so I'll let Teresa give the update. But before we jump into that, so from what I heard, then there's enough I guess spec to be included to have it 1.3 in December, but it looks like it's going to be not on December 15th, right, Kevin? You're going to delay probably a week.
Yeah, maybe. Yep. Just from the sounds of it today, yeah, it'll probably be a week out.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. That's all I wanted to ask. Teresa, are you on the call?
I am. I'm trying to recall what happened 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I can't remember. I just remember we talked about, trying to get budget numbers and stuff together, encouraging people to participate in the E4J naming, the branding part. But we didn't have any actions taken away other than trying to see if we have any budget alliance for the EclipseCon France.
Right.
That's on the channel. Other than that, I really have no updates.
Yeah, the last call, the half of the call that I attended, we went over. We're trying to come up with line items and approximate ballpark figures for the budget for next year, and so we've been working on that. There's also a D zone, microservices zone. I'm not sure if you want to give an update on that, Teresa. I don't know if there was any progress on that since we talked last.
Yeah, they wanted a 6 months commitment and a pretty hefty price tag with that. I think as a group, we haven't, decided if we want to do that or not because we want to see the overall budget for the other 2 activities. But if you guys were interested, they were looking at about a $42,000 commitment for 6 months. And that's a split up amongst other companies within MicroProfile. So that's why we have not made a commitment.
Okay.
Anybody have questions about that? I know you guys are probably frequent readers of D-Zones. This is basically to build a new channel microservices zone, and they're looking for three sponsors for a 6 month commitment before they open it up, and it's to their audience. And since it's a new program, they have no traction or numbers to really give us for that value.
Okay. I mean, I like the idea. Okay.
I think we all like the idea. I think the issue is the price.
There's
Yeah.
also webinar components to it. They can guarantee like a 300 sign up. It is individual company. Those lead generation makes sense as a group. I'm not so sure how that would pan out, but if that's of interest, that's something we can talk further. But you guys, there's a lot of also conference speaking engagements going on. So I don't know what the impact of a webinar is compared to the conference speaking and panels.
There was also talks about EclipseCon France. From everyone on the phone, I know IBM plans to attend, right? Anybody else is going to be attending EclipseCon France next June? Anyone on the phone?
So I think it's I brought up in the last time's call. Yeah, I will be involved. I will be in the program. Program. What is it called? So basically, manager pack E4J and the MicroProfile. I think is early next year. I think will get this discussed in the MicroProfile community and encourage more MicroProfile people to submit talks. I think that's pretty good. This time is a dedicated track. So I'm a part of the committee, so the program committee. Hopefully, I think we can get a couple other people from the either E4J or MicroProfile to join me and to lay out a plan to get a lot of interesting topics covered in the EclipseCon France. I think that this is a really, really good opportunity for MicroProfile as a community to push our programming model forward. I think maybe it's still early days because that would be in June time, and then call for paper will start programming in February time. We will start planning for it after the new year.
All right. So, sorry, out of that, I couldn't tell. Was there a call for papers? Have call for papers already gone out, or is there time for that?
No. It's a call for paper has not even started. So probably it will start in February time. So because the conference will only start it in June's time. So we have not met. The committee has not met as yet. So we are going to start our meeting in the January time. It's after New Year.
And I understand the EclipseCon France has about the same number of attendees as EclipseCon Europe, right? It's about 600.
No, it's much smaller.
Oh, it's smaller. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very small conference. I would say it's probably about half of EclipseCon Europe.
Okay. All right. Very good.
I think there are about 260 attendees.
Okay.
And Ian Scarrett emailed yesterday, I think. He said it's about this. I think he put forward a proposal about the sponsorship from MicroProfile community, and he asked him is there any interest in this proposal. And Amy responded, this is all in the emails. And I think you guys marketing team will go ahead to discuss further. Is that right? The Teresa or Cesar. So you guys are going to discuss this further about Ian Garrett's proposal regarding the sponsorship.
Yeah, it's probably we're probably gonna discuss this coming Friday.
Yeah, we
Sure.
have.
All right. I'm gonna switch gears here and try to not turn this into a marketing specific meeting, second half of the meeting. But 1.3, right? It sounds like, especially if we push it off a week, we're 4 days before Christmas potentially. So it sounds like any kind of marketing that we do should probably be geared more towards January.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
what does that mean? What are our plans? Is it just social media basically? We don't have anything else really planned?
Unless there's no conference, right? A big conference in
No.
January.
I'm not aware of anything.
No.
I think it starts in February most of them.
There is DevNexus in Atlanta in February, the second half of February.
Yeah, maybe how many people are going? I am going. I think it's tentatively because one of my talks were accepted. I plan to go if I can get a travel approval. Should be okay. So I mean, is that a bigger crowd? If there's a lot of people going there, maybe it's quite good to announce there.
Could be, but when's 2.0 coming out, or scheduled to come out?
Don't know. I mean, the last time we talked, we were saying first quarter, but
Okay.
I think it's pretty loosely defined at this point.
Yep.
I mean, if we release 1.3 in December and then we wait till February to announce it, that's a big gap, no?
Yeah.
So
The
why
other
don't
option
we
is postpone 1.3 maybe to January. Maybe give more time to the subgroups to finish up their specs.
Oh, that's where it gets back to feature driven versus date driven, and
yeah, okay, time box.
Yeah, that's what we're really trying to stick to that, And the good news is that anything that doesn't make it will just go into the next release, right? So it's not like there's a huge delay.
So do you think we can plan a release right before that Nexus?
Which is in February? Probably not.
The end of February.
We're basically at a quarterly cadence.
John, I agree the whole time boxing thing, and I've certainly pushed that a lot in the past. But I would also say, if we're 2 weeks from releasing 1.3 and no one has any release candidates, how likely is anyone going to have anything ready for 1.3? And what I mean is be in a position where the subjects have nothing released, so there's nothing in 1.3 anyway.
Right. So I think the next week will shed much more light on that, Ken. I think from the discussion here, it sounded like there were at least 2 items that were looking to start their release candidate process, almost immediately. But I think we have to play that by ear. And if things don't start moving, then yes, I totally agree that maybe we should just move it out.
Okay. I guess I just wanted to bring that up because I don't want to see us, and this was kind of the case with 1.2, is basically all hands on deck, flying as fast as we can to get all the specs done for a given release. It's like we can't do that every quarter just to get more things in or anything in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I will say, I think the third quarter one was kind of special because of Java 1. And I don't, me personally, I don't feel the same pressure here with the fourth quarter release. But, we have wanted to kind of stick to that. So I think we should continue to push to see what would be available for a MicroProfile 1.3 release, but let's give it a week to 10 days and see what happens.
That's fine.
All right, so sorry, I'm taking a look at the calendar here real quick to see when the next meeting is. All right, it'll be 28th, 1, 2, the 12th. I may be out that week, so someone else may have to post it. But that gives us one more meeting to kind of track this before a potential 1.3 release, right? So we still have one more meeting to go.
Yeah, one more verbal meeting, but hopefully we can
hang out,
make some progress. Yep.
Okay. Alrighty. So do we have MP? Okay. So under roadmap update, I think what I'm going to put down the next week will determine if enough projects will be ready for a 1.3 release in December. Okay. All right. The other thing I had I'll put it under open discussion. I'm going to start a new section here. Open discussion. And Cesar, I know you were looking at the calendar.
Right. So yeah, let's talk about that. So for the Twitter account, so the MicroProfile Twitter account, there is the way we're managing that right now, and I'm gonna go over this so that because I would like to manage the calendar the same way, and if everyone agrees, then we can move in that direction. Is we have a Google group whose members is basically private, and whose members are the folks that can tweet. We can do the same thing. We can create a Google group, a private Google group, and just the members would be whoever needs to update calendar. Could be a member of that Google group, and in that Google group, basically, we would post the password, and so everyone that is a member of that group can just go there and get the password. In this case, it would be for the Gmail account MicroProfile.io, and that will also give access to the YouTube channel, and obviously the Google Plus page that we don't use very much, but we'll be trying to update it as well. So we can do it that way. The other way is giving access to actually, that I don't think that would work because there's a you need an account, a password for that account. Yeah, that the other way would not work. So that basically, we've been doing that with the Twitter account, and I would like to put that on the table, and like to see if you guys would be okay, by doing the same for the MicroProfile calendar.
Yeah, one of the things we had discussed a while back when we were first setting up the project was, do we set up a LastPass account, right? Which is basically a password management system that integrates with browsers and stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, there's still a bootstrapping problem, right? Everyone's going to have, some kind of password to get access to the passwords, and that'll have to be moved around. So, I don't know. Does anyone else have thoughts about Cesar's proposal about just having a Google group with restricted access? And one other thought. My initial thinking around, okay, who gets access to this Google group, right? So my thinking was, a project lead on each project, a marketing person or two, and then the MicroProfile leads. right? Whoever that may be at the time. So that's my initial bootstrapping idea about who would get access to the passwords to actually modify the calendar. So 2 topics: managing the passwords, and the other is who can actually have access. Thoughts?
I think once you have this password, then you have to manage the list. Why? I mean, is there any reason why we have to like secure this calendar? Is that okay to open to everybody? And has anybody just go ahead to delete the Google Calendar, the entries and etc. So
I mean,
because
that's the other option, having open it up to anybody and everybody.
yeah.
But, that's not going to stop anybody, from ruining the calendar, erasing
Yeah,
entries and stuff. I don't know.
yeah. There's probably a difference between Twitter, right, and a calendar, right? Twitter is a blast out to the world, whereas, right, and people can put in really bad things in Twitter, and the same can be true of a calendar. They can put really bad things into a calendar, but the scope is much more narrow, right? The number of people that are going to actually use the calendar to attend meetings and stuff.
So
the risk is less.
right. One thing that we are doing, and I don't know, I didn't mention it because I don't know if it's going to work. I haven't tested this with Google Calendar. What we're doing, there is a marketing drive, Google Drive, right? So in there you can basically give permissions by email, to people to access the files in the drive. What I haven't tried is you can also specify emails for the calendar. And if I use the MicroProfile group email as one, and I give it access to the calendar, I'm not sure if that'll basically have the same result as with the drive. It will give access to everybody within the MicroProfile group access to the calendar.
So maybe we take a really quick step back and ask, ponder Emily's question: should we give everybody access to the calendar? Right. I'm a little bit nervous about that because, what may end up start happening is people, even for very good reasons, right? People may start putting in, hey, I'm speaking at about MicroProfile at a jug or whatever, right? And we could see lots of things happening. That kind of thing should be in its own calendar. But maybe we optimize later.
Yeah, I don't know.
When you say
I don't have as much concern about that as some naive people not knowing what to do and then they're deleting entries.
Yeah.
So when you say everyone, you mean committers or all of the community?
That's an open question, I think.
Okay. I think the other point which is important to me and probably to some other folks over here is that we get some follow the sun possibility at least to get changes in. So even if it's only some dedicated people like Emily or Kevin or so, but that we're not dependent on the US West Coast to make changes.
Hey, what's wrong with that? Okay, so no, I fully understand, and I agree, right? And that's why I just thought, we could scope it to, people that, project leads, component leads, right? Everyone that's a component lead, can take it. But I'm actually okay with committers as well, right? But I think we'd also want to have some marketing people being able to modify the calendar potentially.
Yeah, the question is, once you have a list, we have to manage the list. Like we add more committers, and then who will go ahead to add the committers, the new committers to that list. I mean, some committers maybe, and the same thing applies to the marketing team. I think maybe I think we'll open it up and then and we open this calendar to the public to see what will happen. If something happens, then we can add a look because the information there is nothing secret. So the only risk is okay, someone deleted, but we all import the calendar into our personal calendar, etc. I don't see the information will get lost. We can always restore, and if these things happen once, and we will add things in. We will add a look. Unless it's automatic, I think it's really again you will leave people out because tomorrow we could have a new stack and we will add that stack lead to the list.
I see this calendar, right, is all about the intent of the calendar in its current form, and I think it should stay this way, is as a way for MicroProfile to operate, right? It's the meetings for the projects and right, this live hangout. It's the actual execution of the project, and therefore I really do think it should be a smaller scope. There's no reason to open it up to the world, right? It's for the people that I think help operate MicroProfile. If we need, another calendar around people doing talks around MicroProfile and that kind of thing, we could set up a separate calendar, right? For that.
Yep, I agree, John.
But the only concern I have is you can limit it to a number of people, if it's a new stack being created and etc., and someone needs to take responsibility to, programmatically or proactively add that person to that list. Basically, all I'm trying to say, if there's a way to automate the process, I think that's best.
Yeah, whenever there's a new committer, you're saying automatically, for example, automatically have them added?
And from my point of view, I don't see a big risk to open the calendar, even to the public, because although we use it to organize what we do, everything can be recreated. Even if somebody deletes the events, there's no risk of not having the event because people know. Usually, the usual people who attend the Hangouts know when the events are scheduled, and then when they find out that something is missing in the calendar or incorrect, they can easily fix it. So I don't think we need to be really wary about somebody doing some bad things in the calendar, and if they do, we can fix them easily. So maybe we don't need to really restrict.
Yeah, I agree. I think I have a personal input as well for the calendars.
All right. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left on the call.
So let me propose
maybe what I'll
this.
do is
I'll
start
John?
a thread. What's
that?
Oh,
you want to start a thread? Okay.
Yeah.
You can start
I don't
a
think we're
thread,
going to come to an answer today. Right now, I mean.
Kuda? Okay. All right. So I guess I'll just wait till to see what happens after the discussion then.
Yeah, and we'll vote. I don't know if we vote on it or what, but I'm really nervous about opening it up. I'm worried about, entries to, porn websites or.
I don't mean we need to do or should do, but I just wanted to explain that there's not very big risk in doing so. And if we don't, I would just strongly suggest to have an open list of people who can access the calendar so that anybody can access them and ask them to update the calendar to bring some transparency. Because what I really don't like is when something is locked up for access and the list of people who have access is not visible. Then
I agree with that. Yeah, the list of people who have edited access to the calendar should be published somewhere, right? Same thing with Twitter, right? We should know who
True.
has access, to the Twitter in the context of transparency, right? So I do like that idea.
I'm checking right now if that is the case. So if you go to the Google group, marketing, and then you just say about, the members of that group are known, they're listed. So it's public.
Okay.
That information is public.
But that's because you have added access to the group.
Well, actually, no, I don't
Any-
actually. This
Oh.
group is managed by Amelia.
Okay. Maybe that's how we solve that problem. All right. So maybe we don't have to start a thread. So we got 1 minute left. Is everyone okay if we limit it? We limit the group to committers, plus some marketing folks, maybe Teresa and Cesar.
Okay.
Right. Anyone?
So who has the list? Can you send me that list?
So one thing with the Google Calendar, you can indicate that a Google group has access to a given calendar. Well, we already have a Google group defined for committers, so we could just assign that committer group to that, and then add the individuals from the marketing team.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Okay.
think it's done.
So what's that Google group? Can somebody share it with me or put it in the chat?
Yeah, I will get that, and I'll put it into the meeting minutes.
Oh, okay, great. And I'll use that, and I'll just add that give you access to the calendar to that group, and then I'll add Teresa and I, and then we'll be done.
All right. Awesome. I guess it's the top of the hour, so this concludes our regularly scheduled broadcast. We will see everyone in 2 weeks. Same bat time, same bat Google group. So, enjoy the next 2 weeks, and talk to you then.
Bye, guys. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye.
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 Bye.